Alright guys, it's that time of the week and we are back for our Championship score predictions. Coming off the back of a weekend in the Championship where we only had 5 fixtures, but we obviously had quite a bit of FA Cup action as well. We've got a full fixture list to look forward to coming up in midweek, and all of those games will be previewed today. But if you went to any matches over the weekend, do feel free to leave your thoughts on them down below. But without any further ado, let's jump in. So to kick off today's video, we're going to Coventry up against QPR, a game which I could see being fairly tight, to be honest with you. Worth taking into consideration, QPR will have had a bigger recovery coming into this one as they weren't in action over the weekend. The reverse fixture between these two earlier in the season did end level. I wouldn't be massively surprised if this game went down a similar sort of avenue or as a sort of one goal either way sort of affair. For QPR, they have been decent value for money on the road of late. They've only lost 2 of their last 8 away matches. I know they lost that one on the road last time against Millwall, but generally speaking this season, Martin Fuentes has made his side a tough nut to crack away from home. Coventry will get into some good areas and definitely are capable of scoring a few goals, but score prediction here, I'm going to kick it off with a 1-1 draw between those two. Fancy QPR for a point on the road, maybe. After that, we go to Pride Park for Derby up against Oxford. It's Gary Rowett returning to his former stomping ground, but will he do his former club a favour in this game? I'm not so sure. What made Derby so competitive at the start of the season was their home form, and it really feels like they need to get back to that, along with losing their last 3 home matches. They've also failed to score in all of those games as well, so this one is the sort of match where if Oxford managed to find themselves a goal ahead in this one, you can really see them frustrating the lives out of Derby. But it does feel like quite a tight, low scoring affair, this one. Oxford have been fairly draw heavy on the road of late. 1 goal either way in that one wouldn't surprise me, but I'm actually going to go for a goalless draw between those two, 0-0 I'm saying between Derby and Oxford. Next then we go to Fratton Park for Portsmouth up against Cardiff. Now last time out in the Championship, Cardiff were beaten 7-0 by Leeds. They'll be keen to put that result behind them as swiftly as possible, but this one won't be easy going to a ground like Fratton Park, which has tended to be a pretty happy hunting ground for Portsmouth so far this season. Obviously the vast majority of their points have come in home matches so far this season, and was doing a little bit of a dig into some of the stats for Pompey at home so far this season. They've averaged 1.5 points per game in home matches, which if projected over the entire season in home and away matches, 1.5 points per game will be worth 70 points. So they've been performing almost like a playoff outfit in home matches. It's just that on the road they've often struggled to maintain those standards. But this one is a big game with implications at the bottom end of the Championship. Wouldn't be massively surprised if it ends level. We have had quite a few draws in the head-to-head matches between sides in and around the bottom end of the table, but score prediction for me, it's hard to look past that Portsmouth home form. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Pompey in that game. Next up then we go to Vicarage Road for Watford up against Leeds. Now had this fixture taken place earlier in the season, I think the chances of a Watford upset would have been substantially higher. Vicarage Road was one of the toughest grounds to go to in the first half of the season. Lately it's not quite had that same daunting feel about it though. Watford have lost their last 4 home games. To be fair, I do remember when these sides met at the back end of last season, it was a cracking game of football. Watford caused Leeds all sorts of problems. In the end, Joseph got Leeds back into it and it finishes a 2-2 draw. But the energy and life about Watford in that game last season was absolutely brilliant. I believe it was one of Tom Cleverley's first games in charge as well. If they can rekindle that sort of spirit from last season, then maybe they can cause Leeds some problems in this one. But score prediction for me, I am fancying a Leeds win on the road in that one. Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Leeds in that one. And then there's the last of the matches we've got coming up on Tuesday. We're going to Carrow Road for Norwich up against Preston North End. For North End, last time out in the Championship, it was that 2-1 loss against Blackburn Rovers. We'll be looking to get that out of our system as quickly as possible. But back-to-back away matches in the league, now heading away to Carrow Road. This one won't be easy. Now, to be fair to North End, thinking back to the reverse fixture against Norwich earlier in the season, back in October, I thought we gave a pretty good account of ourselves in that game. We found ourselves 2 goals up after just 12 minutes in that one, but Norwich managed to fight back and ultimately it ended as a 2-2 draw. A point on the road in this one would not be a bad result whatsoever, but with Norwich, how many chances they tend to create at Carrow Road especially. North End, I've still got a question mark over, especially when it comes to away performances. Score prediction for me in this one, reluctantly, I am going to go 2-1 Norwich. I think that will be a tough one for North End. After that, to Ashton Gate for Bristol City up against Stoke. This is the first of the games we've got coming up on Wednesday night. Now, the last time these two sides faced each other in the Championship was back in November. It was Narcis Pelac who was still in charge of Stoke, and it feels like quite a bit has changed since then, especially with Stoke City. Now, for Stoke, last time in the Championship, they did get that massive result, 2-1 away at Hull. To be fair to Stoke under Mark Robins, they have been pretty hard to beat. They've just been so draw heavy recently, haven't they? Bristol City are certainly no mugs, especially when it comes to their home form at Ashton Gate, which has typically been quite a tough stadium to visit recently. But with the way Stoke have been gradually picking up points recently, I wouldn't be too surprised if they're decent value for a point in this one. Score prediction for me, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw between those two. Next up we go to Turf Moor for Burnley up against Hull City. This one feels quite tight and low scoring, doesn't it? Now, Hull are one of the few teams in the Championship this season who have been much better away from home than they have been at home. And to be honest, that same logic probably applies to Burnley as well, actually. Hull have won their last 3 consecutive away matches in the Championship, all without conceding a goal. And during that time, they've obviously beaten some decent sides as well, picking up results at grounds like Bramall Lane, the Den and Ewood Park, 3 stadiums that aren't easy to travel to. The onus will be on Burnley to take the game to Hull in this one, but these are the sorts of matches where they tend to come a little bit unstuck, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if these two sides just end up cancelling each other out. There is a massive temptation here just to predict another goalless draw. It feels like the easy option to do. I wouldn't blame you for doing the same. I just feel like in home matches especially, Burnley need to get that consistency about them, especially when it comes to winning matches, to properly take the fight to the sides battling for automatic promotion. Score prediction in this one, I'm going to back against Hull's good away form lately. I'm going to go 1-0 Burnley, but I do think it'll be very tight. After that, we go to Home Park for Plymouth up against Millwall. I've got a feeling the predictions for this game may be a little bit varied in the comments down below. You've got Millwall, who started out fairly slowly under Alex Neil, but have definitely been picking up recently with 3 consecutive wins. They've only conceded 1 goal in the last 270 minutes of Championship football as well. But Plymouth have had a slight uptick in form recently. They had that good point on the road away at Sunderland, and then against the odds managed to beat West Brom at Home Park last time as well. If Millwall score first in this game, I could definitely see them grinding out a tough 1-0 away victory like they've been quite good at on the road recently. But Plymouth are no complete mugs at home. Score prediction there, going to go for a 1-1 draw, you know. Next up, we go to the Stadium of Light for Sunderland up against Luton. It's been 11 days since we last saw Luton in action. Quite a while, obviously. They weren't in FA Cup action. Last time we saw them was that 1-1 draw with Sheffield Wednesday. Maybe a small step in the right direction, putting in an end to that losing streak that they've had on the road recently. But the overall picture for Luton still doesn't look brilliant. It's no wins from their last 8, and their next couple of fixtures are looking particularly tricky. They've got this one away at Sunderland, and then at the weekend they've got a home game against Sheffield Utd that won't be easy either. Now, Sunderland every now and again can take their eye off the ball. Obviously, we had an example of that recently when Plymouth were on a terrible run of form. They came to the Stadium of Light and managed to walk away with a point thanks to a late goal. I'm sure Luton would take a point coming into this one. In the reverse fixture between these two earlier in the season, it was goals from Rigg and Mundle that made the difference for the Black Cats, and I do reckon they'll get the job done in this one. Score prediction, going to go 2-1 Sunderland in that game. After that, we go to the Liberty for Swansea up against Sheffield Wednesday. Now, I was taking a look into these two sides and their records against each other in recent history, and it is worth taking into consideration that Swansea have been a little bit of a bogey team in recent times for Sheffield Wednesday. And Sheffield Wednesday's last 15 head-to-head matches against Swansea, they've only won 1 of them, and their last win away at Swansea came all the way back in 1983. Now, read what you will. I do think this one will be fairly tight, especially with it being a midweek match. These are the sorts of matches where fatigue does come into play a little bit. Managers need to be a little bit smarter with squad rotation, especially those managers who aren't working with massive squads. Earlier in the season, these two played out a goalless draw at Hillsborough. I wouldn't be surprised if this one is fairly tight. Score prediction for me, I'm fancying a draw between those two, 1-1 I'm saying. At that we go to Bramall Lane for a big match between Sheffield United and Middlesbrough. The Blades will be after a little bit of revenge in this one after losing the reverse fixture to Middlesbrough earlier in the season. It's interesting because when you look at a lot of the underlying stats, Middlesbrough tend to rank above Sheffield United in quite a lot of key departments. You know, Borough take more shots per 90, they average more possession, they actually concede fewer chances at goal as well compared to Sheffield United. But you then look at the league table and there's such a huge gap between these two teams. I still maintain that Middlesbrough at their best are absolutely capable of going toe-to-toe with any team in the Championship, but Sheffield United can be quite good at nullifying those sides, especially at Bramall Lane where they'll obviously have the home crowd roaring them on behind them. A draw here would not surprise me. Borough been a little bit up and down on the road of late though. I'm going to go 1-0 Sheffield United. I'm going to flip the score from the reverse fixture earlier in the season. And then to round off this midweek batch of games, we're going to the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Blackburn. Tony Mowbray up against his former employers, but can he get one over them in this game here? Well, the reverse fixture between these two sides earlier in the season did finish goalless, and generally speaking there's not been a whole lot between West Brom and Blackburn this season. They've tended to be quite close to one another in the league table, and it's another game which feels quite tight, to be honest with you. Midweek in the Championship does tend to throw out quite a lot of draws, and generally speaking West Brom have been one of the more draw heavy sides in the Championship so far this season. Blackburn certainly have their threats though at the opposite end of the pitch. First goal does feel quite important in this one, but I'm just edging it to West Brom, I think, with home advantage. Score prediction in that one, I'm going to go 2-1 to the Baggies. But there you guys have it. That will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to go ahead and drop your score predictions in the comments down below. But other than that, thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.